Burgundy.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast. On Sunday, the 7th of March, 2021. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Zachary Burgess.
Somewhat success.
And Robert Kemp.
Somewhat. Only somewhat success? What did you say? Who am I?
He said, great success.
Yeah. Oh, great success. Oh, okay.
Clearly.
Definitely a somewhat success.
I mean, I count it as a win.
What? That we're all still here and alive?
Most of my successes are somewhat successes. Rather than fully qualified successes.
Yeah, I don't think you really ever get full success.
No, it's true. Maybe in computer games, but not in life. And even then, in games, it's quite rare these days.
Yeah, I mean, literally something I get to talk about later when I'm talking about Stardew. The amount of success that's been happening.
The quantity
may not, in fact, be full.
Is this the quest to 100% things has definitely got more difficult.
Yeah.
But then all has it. Games were harder at one point.
Yeah, but games were harder when they didn't have achievements.
True. Yeah,
now you have an exact measure of your success.
I only just learned that S rank is from Japanese school grades, exam grades.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, S is above A, whatever. It's like A star.
Why on earth did we introduce, it's one of those things, like grading systems where you just go, yeah, this is the top run. Why do we need one more than that?
Just these ones, they go to 11, like across the board, 11, 11. So most blokes, they're playing on 10. Where do you go from there? Nowhere. But these, you see, we can get that extra. We'd go up to 11.
And one louder.
And one louder. Why don't you just make 10 louder and just make that the loudest, and then no, these go to 11. I've just realised that my hair has grown so much that I'm starting to look like Nigel Tufnell, and I've because I realised it because I was on a what do you even call them? Video conference, Zoom. And it was not a Zoom because it was not using the proprietary.
But it was a Zoom-like.
It was a Hangout.
It was a Zoom clone.
Yeah, and
a Skype clone. I guess
one of my colleagues was talking about they got a guitar, so I showed everyone on the call all my guitars, which I have in my room, which is like 4 or 5 different guitars, and then I realised I was basically Nigel Tufnell. The sustain, look, it's famous for its sustain. I need to watch Spinal Tap again.
I don't know if I've ever watched it all the way through.
Oh,
I've seen lots of. Yeah, it might be one of those films where I've seen the entirety of it in pieces.
Do you ever see that documentary about Anvil, which is basically Spinal Tap but real?
No, never heard of it. Never heard of Anvil.
Yeah, they were some moderately successful like metal band, as in they were in the same kind of circles as like the Big Four, but weren't as big, obviously. You know, in the 80s, and then they disappeared.
The medium 5?
Yeah, they were in the medium 5. Who are the Big Four? Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth,
Maiden?
Slayer? I can't remember. Iron Maiden, I don't think they're a part of that. I think they're earlier even, aren't they, Iron Maiden? I mean, obviously
Maiden are eternal.
Yeah, they're eternal, yeah. Anyway. But yeah, Spinal Tap is so almost too subtle a satire.
Yeah, it can be at times. I think I was introduced my first encounters with Spinal Tap when I was a bit too young, if you know what I mean, and just didn't
get the joke.
Yeah, and just thought this is just some documentary.
Right, exactly. Because they went the other way and just made it a band after that point.
Yeah. I think that might be what confused me or something.
Yeah.
I think I was vaguely aware of Spinal Tap actually as a music venture.
Because of course they were on The Simpsons in that episode, because one of them is in The Simpsons, Harry Shearer.
Sure,
right?
Yeah. Mr. Burns. It is Mr. Burns, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. He plays.
Oh yeah, no, I remember now. Yeah, because he was on Buzzcocks once, Harry Shearer.
Yeah. as a legitimate rock star as well as voice of Mr. Burns.
Yeah, absolutely. Most important. I don't know which is more important.
Probably Mr. Burns.
Yeah, probably.
Although
Mr.
this
Burns.
is Spinal Tap's pretty good.
I talking about watching things. Finished off that WandaVision, yo.
Yeah, me too. Thoughts?
I mean, it takes a hell of a left turn. That's all I'm gonna say. It's kind of like just like, oh, that was a little bit out of nowhere.
Wasn't it already starting from a left turn though? That was like the whole point.
Okay, kinda, but I mean, I get what they were trying to achieve. You know, they're trying to, put that character back into sort of comic book territory.
Yeah,
minor spoilers, I suppose. But yeah, and it's interesting, and they leave a lot of questions open still, and it's like it's one, it's not going to get a season 2. Let's put it that way.
No,
they'll be.
I was just thinking that this kind of mini-series format is probably the closest you can get to like a one-shot comic, like a graphic novel.
Yeah,
right? It actually makes sense. And if
a
they
slightly
just keep
longer
doing
form,
this,
a slightly longer form film, like at work, and obviously the episodic structure worked because of the whole episodic structure
because of
at the
meta
start.
thing about it. But I have to admit, I enjoyed the weird meta episodes at the start more than the end. But that's just me, I think.
Yeah, well, I liked the middle the best, honestly, as there was the sort of interweaving going on between the two setups, between the show and between the outside world trying to get in. I liked that bit more. Like towards the end where they're getting into all like standard exposition and a lot of exposition basically. and then as I said, there's this sudden left turn into like, oh right, okay. I didn't actually see that stuff coming. It was just a bit out of nowhere.
The clue's in her name, right?
I know, but I'm not familiar with that side
fair enough.
Of Marvel particularly.
I mean, she's technically like Magneto's daughter and a bunch of shit like that. Like she's an X-Man woman, right? Isn't she? Scarlet Witch. She's a mutant,
yeah, technically,
which doesn't exist in the MCU yet.
Yeah,
now that
foreshadowing.
Yeah, but I think probably the most annoying, not for me, but for my flatmate who's more of a comics fan and more of a superhero movie fan than me, is it was a bit of a fake out in the end with the actor for her brother or whatever.
Oh man, that was genius. Like, and I didn't peg it actually. A gnome pegged it. She was like, I'm pretty sure. She got very confused basically, and
it was
multiple
really cool
points throughout this between like this and Fox's X-Men, which they now call Legacy Marvel, by the way, on Disney Plus.
Oh,
they call the whole X-Men timeline Legacy Marvel.
What do they call the Spider-Man movies, like the Sam Raimi ones? Are they Legacy?
I don't know because Disney, I guess, haven't got that those, still.
Yeah. Okay, but I thought there was going to be more to the crossing. I thought it was going to be the start of like a, cross-universe thing where they just use their insane, muscle to just bring in frickin', Hugh Jackman and shit, or whatever. But no,
I think they'd have to totally recast what they do with X-Men from here.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, they are supposedly doing it. They're rumored to be doing it with Spider-Man, right? Supposedly.
Well, the whole multiverse thing. Yeah, because
exactly.
there's 2 multiverse films coming up. There's Spider-Man 3 and the next Doctor Strange is going to be exploring all of that.
And we know that Wanda is going to be in Doctor Strange.
Yes, we do.
And Doctor Strange was supposed to come out like the month after the end of WandaVision, but it all got screwed up by COVID.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be the start of a multiverse thing where they'd bring in all actors from previous, because they already did at the end of, although no one thought about it at the time, but the end of the previous Spider-Man film, there was a post-credit tease where they brought in the same guy playing J. Jonah Jameson as the Sam Raimi films, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Which was awesome. I mean, who's going to play that apart from J.K. Simmons?
I know. The problem is, he's somewhat unbeatable. That's the problem. I mean, they actually brought him in to do the Spider-Man games.
Was that him
as well? I think they actually brought him in.
It can't be him doing those things in. It can't, because there's too much, because he's constantly chiming in on the radio, isn't he? That's too much voice
well,
work
it's his podcast.
that
in
can't
the
be
game.
J.K. Simmons.
Fact check.
Yeah, that needs a fact check. I don't think he'd do that. That would be too long in the voice booth for an actor of his stature. Pray silence for the fact check.
Talk amongst yourselves.
What do you think, Zach?
I don't think I'd recognise it that well.
His voice, I think his voice is quite distinctive, isn't it, J.K. Simmons?
Well, yeah, I mean his voice is, but I don't
Yeah.
think I'd be able to tell as easily from a video game
No.
interpretation.
No. You'd tell if he was rushing or dragging.
Well, yeah, and they probably would have credited him. Apparently, there is no credit in the game
What, for that voice entirely,
for
or
that,
for him
for that
specifically?
voice. No, just for that voice, there is no credit.
Weird.
So maybe it was him. Maybe he ghostwrited it.
Yeah. Conspiracy.
Bizarre. No, okay, no, it is. It's on IMDb as Darren DePaul.
Good
Who
old Darren DePaul.
whoever that is. Yeah.
Mystery solved.
There we go. Not JK. It was a pretty decent approximation, though.
Oh, yeah. You always find somebody fairly decent to do a half impression.
I was about to say, give him a mustache. He might actually look a bit like JK Sims. A little bit.
So I watched Man of Steel last night because...
Oh, God,
my
why?
flatmate put it on. That was bad.
Why?
That was bad.
It's so bad.
My sister got it, and I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. But it was, yeah, it's bad.
It's like it's not even... It's one of those films that I can't even, like, say is a good time bad. It's just...
No, it's just boring and just bashing you over the head with the... And it's annoying because, like, the cast are not bad necessarily. Like, I think he's fine, Henry Cavill. He's got no dialogue to work with at all. And like, Michael Shannon, I think he's always quite a fun baddie. But, no.
Well, apparently Darren DePaul plays Reinhardt from Overwatch as well. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I shouldn't have watched it because I was keeping my streak of only having seen Wonder Woman as the only DC film I'd ever seen. Apart, if you don't count, you know.
I mean, you'd have done well if you'd have stopped there.
Yeah, I know. Damn it.
Because apparently that new Wonder Woman film isn't all that hot.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that, but
I heard. But that might be bad in a fun way. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Because it sounded really stupid. So that might be fun. I don't know. Whereas Man of Steel was just...
I caught Gnome up on Endgame.
As in...
The film.
She's seen it.
We've now
Okay.
seen it. Well,
Okay,
she's now
that's
seen
good.
it. I'd already seen it, but yeah, we caught her up. And it's like, at the end of it, all she could really say was, that is a long film.
It's a long film. Doesn't feel as long as Man of Steel, let me tell you that.
No, I mean, yeah, it does that thing where it's like 3 hours long and still manages to hold you to the end. It's good.
Yeah. Well, that one has quite clear acts, doesn't it? It's got the really somber first act. Then it has the time heist, which is awesome, the middle act. And then it has the big battle third act.
Yeah.
And the epilogue.
And they repeatedly don't take themselves seriously, which is standard, I suppose, for Marvel, but it's decent.
That's America's ass. And I'm quite looking forward to the Loki TV show after that.
I mean, maybe. It might be alright. I'm not sure.
I mean, the next one's the Captain Falcon. Look.
No.
Captain
Captain moves.
Falcon. Yeah.
Yeah, Falcon. That's a
Falcon.
weird one, isn't it? Because he's never really seemed like a particularly strong character in what they've done so far. So I don't know why.
That's like the safe one, I think, compared to the weirdness of WandaVision and Loki. So, not so excited about that.
I was always kind of confused by how they treated Winter Soldier, Bucky and all that. They kind of, he seemed like such a big deal at the start of the MCU, or that sort of middle-y bit, I suppose. And then they kind of just went, he's just sort of about now,
Yeah, I mean, they
I
did use him
I
quite
can't
a bit,
even
right?
really remember what his deal is like anymore because it just seemed to came to nothing important in the end.
Because he was in the Winter Soldier, obviously, and in Civil War, right?
Hmm.
And then he ended up in Wakanda chopping wood or something, didn't he?
Something like that. Yeah.
I can't remember.
I can't. Yeah, there's a lot to remember there.
Yeah. Well, now they've started retiring characters, so you don't have to remember so much.
Yeah. It's sort of like I was getting a little bit of that whole they need to retire some stuff here. Like I watched the end of Disenchantment as well. Not the end, but the end of season 3. Just the Matt Groening, not Futurama, not Simpsons thing. Sort of Fantasyland thing that he did. It's all right. It can be funny at times, but it's not nearly the hitter that Futurama is or stuff like that. And it seems to be focusing on its storyline, which then frequently doesn't make any sense or takes left turns into like other directions because they feel like it. And it's just like, all right, what's going on now? Why just why? Like you're trying to tell a story, but I'm sitting here just going, why? Constantly.
So it's archy, is it?
A little, but no arc seems to last longer than maybe a couple of episodes, and then they'll bring something back from a season ago, and you're like, wait, what? You're coming back now? Or they'll change their minds about what the secret society is all about, and I don't know. I find it very hard to follow. And it's supposed to be a comedy romp.
Yeah. Just a light-hearted thing. Yeah. I've only seen the first few episodes of that, so I didn't get into it yet, but maybe I'll give it a try. I like the voice actress. What's her name? Abby from Broad City.
And it's got Marcus Phoenix in it, you know.
Oh, right, yeah.
John DiMaggio of Bender fame.
Where have you gone, John DiMaggio? Anyway, should we talk about games?
Let's do some news.
Yeah, what's going on?
I mean, in no particular order, I just want to hear Zach talk about that Pokemon thing.
Pokemon.
Well, I don't know how much there is to talk about exactly. Because it was just, teaser trailers at this point. Apart from the Pokemon Snap thing, which is coming quite soon. But, there's not much to talk about in that either, because it's Pokemon Snap.
We knew about that before, though, right?
Yeah, we knew about that before.
We knew about that before, but is Pokemon Snap? Like, is it actually just the N64 game, but, like, modern?
Well, I suppose that is the question. The question about it has always been, like, content.
Yeah.
Because the N64 game was not big, that's for sure.
No, I don't know how they justified the cost of a whole N64 cartridge and all that stuff.
Well, you get away with that back then.
Yeah, I guess.
because Pokemon.
Pokemon.
It was
Glad
like
that's
it.
But now they're making... Well, I mean, they're remaking Diamond and Pearl, which, I mean, obviously. I don't know why everyone seemed so surprised about that.
Are they just remaking steadily in a wave?
Yeah, they're just going through all of the games and remaking them at this point.
Right.
Because what was the last one they did then? Was it Black and White or...
No,
or was
Black and White will be after this. It was the GBA ones, right? Emerald and I forget what the other.
Gold and Silver.
No, Gold and Silver was the Game Boy Color ones.
Oh, they were because it was only Red Blue. Then they did Gold Silver,
and then the GBA ones. Emerald
GBA,
and Ruby,
right.
Probably.
Diamond.
No, Diamond and Pearl are these ones.
Yeah, no, I'm
fifth generation.
The DS ones.
Yes, original DS. So yeah, they're remaking that. Some people don't particularly like the slightly weird art style, but it's the same situation as the Zelda thing, I guess. So like they've remade pixel art into not pixel art, but kept like the proportions of everything weird and like chibi-esque.
Oh, have they? So they didn't think to just take the current Pokemon style then and just backport it like they did with Let's Go?
No.
Weird.
I mean, in the battles, it still looks like regular human people, but they've done like how the actual games were, where it's just like you have little what would have been sprites that fit in a square.
Oh, you mean they've got like a Link's Awakening treatment on it?
It's kind of weird how Zelda. I mean, we'll talk about the the Breath of the Wild rip-off one, but it's kind of weird how Zelda makes, modern 3D look really good, but can also make a remake of a 2D tile-based game look really good, and Pokemon can't manage either.
Well, maybe. I didn't think it looked that terrible.
The remakes.
Yeah, the Diamond Pearl remake thing. I
Probably
mean, I think I need to see more of it to actually be sure about that. And also, I mean, I don't remember how well the DS one ran, but hopefully it runs better, regardless. The 3DS one was the one that you definitely recognise that one struggled in places. Mainly because they tried to do too much, where it was just like you had triple battles, where it's like 6 Pokemon at a time. But not in Diamond and Pearl. Hopefully that will just... I mean, it's not sprites any longer. That's the risk.
Right.
But, I mean, it's on way more powerful hardware than the DS. So it should be totally fine, for God's sake.
So what game with 3D modelled Pokemon has the most Pokemon? Is it Sword and Shield?
No, because they took them all out. It would be X and Y, I guess.
Or X2, Y2?
Did those actually add any more? I don't even remember.
I haven't a clue. You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I don't remember whether they did or not. But yes, those were the last games before the culling, obviously.
The culling. I'm just imagining like a pile of Pokemon in the open world area now, just all burning.
Yep, pretty much. They haven't quite got round to DLCing them all back in yet. But maybe they won't, because now they're going to make this new other game.
So what is Arceus?
About the complete Pokedex. What was it called? When people complaining it didn't have all the Pokemon.
I don't know. Old Dex.
Old Dex. Something like that.
Something Dex, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something Dex, wasn't it?
Well, it's always been called the National Dex.
Oh, the National Dex. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's multiple nations, aren't there, in Pokemon Land, Pokemon World?
Well, yeah, but that's why it was always weird. Because even since, like, Gold and Silver, you literally went to basically another country.
Yeah, different regions.
Well, okay, it was actually, I suppose, technically regions of the same country in the Pokemon world.
In that one.
They were both Japan, essentially.
Yeah, and they were actually connected, like they were physically next to each other, right? In that one.
But yes, and then you went to other theoretical countries, but it's always, you've got the National Dex.
Okay.
Are these like states, do you reckon, of like a America-like country?
Well, maybe in the Pokemon world they just don't have actual countries any longer. It's all just one big country, but in different regions.
The world government of Pokemon.
Yeah.
Anyway, Arc to what? Breath of the Wild ripoff thing.
Is it Arceus or Arceus?
Legends.
Whatever. However you want to say it. But yes, they're making the game that they should have made with Sword and Shield, except they still don't seem to actually be doing a good job of it.
It looks well bad. Something about the grass.
I haven't seen the trailer to talk me through it.
Well, the one thing that's noticeable, but there's a lot of quick cuts, so it kind of, tries not to focus on anything for too long. But there's a really weird, I can't tell whether it's like some kind of extremely harsh LOD on the animations or whatever, but when things get slightly far away, they turn low frame rate. So you can see the Pokemon animation just running at way 2 frames.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon LOD approach.
Yeah, but it's it seems to be a really close line where they've started doing that, so it's quite noticeable. It's not like they're really far away.
What if they? Well, presumably they're trying to take what they'd learned from the open world area on Sword and Shield, which ran like garbage.
Yeah.
And they're
trying to
make
as many savings as they can.
Yeah, how can we unmess this up?
On the plus side, there seems to be better battle animations. I haven't looked at it enough, and they don't show enough of it to be are there more than 2 animations type of thing? But if they are still using hella generic animations, they're definitely doing a better job of hiding it in this one. Maybe. But yeah, it seems like the game they should have made, except they still haven't succeeded fully. But then the question is,
whether
of
or not
course,
they spoke to Nintendo or whatever and be like, "Can we borrow the Breath of the Wild engine?"
well, I'm pretty sure they haven't borrowed the Breath of the Wild engine.
No, that's fairly clear.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Sorry, I'm watching it now. I see what you mean. There's one shot like which looks like a battle-y type thing, and the frame rate and the distance looks really odd. And it's not that far. It's like 10 meters.
It's like quite close. When they're running around in the open world catching Pokemon, there's a couple of the shots where it's like that Pokemon looks like it's barely animating at all. It's just like jiggling in like frame steps.
Yeah, it is strange. I wonder how much saving you actually make with like animation LOD like that.
Yeah, because it's not like the model is less detailed, or maybe it is too. But
I mean, yeah, probably is.
You know, this is clearly. Well, I was about to say this is clearly really early footage, but presumably this game is going to come out next year because that's what Pokemon does.
It doesn't inspire confidence, I have to say.
No. I mean, basically pretty much everything that the Pokemon company keeps showing, you just compare it to how good shit looks in Pokemon Snap, which is not made by the Pokemon company.
Yeah,
and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but you have to. Pokemon Snap is very much a constrained. It's a rail shooter.
Sure, but even just the models look better.
Yeah. But they don't have to worry about rendering quite so far. They can use tricks to hide what's in the distance because you don't have to go there. It doesn't have to be an LOD. It can just be good art design.
I don't know. It just there's no point making excuses for them. They have basically infinite resources,
I know.
Especially with the resurgence of Pokemon ever since Pokemon Go came out, whatever. It's still pretty big.
In some ways, fair play. They actually trying to do this. Right?
Well, yeah, but they said they were trying to do it with Sword and Shield, and they didn't.
That was a lie, though. They were just porting a 3DS game.
Yeah. And I don't think they've really said much about this game yet.
No, I suppose not. But you can tell by the title it's not a mainline Pokemon game, right? Why would they call it Arceus Legends or
Pokemon Legends? Well, maybe to separate it, right? So you're not just playing a Pokemon game, you're playing a Legends game.
This may finally be the time to escape the two games problem.
Right, and just make the one game.
Since it already seems to be implying that there's just going to be a limited selection of Pokemon because of story reasons, I guess. Like it's in the past or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that could make sense. You reset it by going to a different time period or something, or a different region again.
Although they showed the free starter Pokemons, and it's like from completely different generations of games, and it's like then you've sort of come into that problem the opposite direction, where it's like, but these Pokemon didn't exist. When we were last here in this region, these Pokemon didn't exist. But now in the past they do. I mean, maybe they went extinct or something. Who knows? I'm sure they'll explain it thoroughly.
I can't believe they've got canon problems in frickin' Pokemon.
Well, their canon problems are just like that they keep having no reasons for things happening.
Yeah.
It's not that they have like competing reasons. It's just like they never talk about it, and it doesn't make any sense.
It's the Zelda problem, right?
Kind of. Except, like, Zelda isn't meant to be continuous most of the time.
Although they did at one point say that it was, which was stupid.
Yes. So I don't know. I mean, it looks like it should be the Pokemon game that should have come out first on the Switch. And if only they hadn't made Sword and Shield and spent the time they made Sword and Shield working on this game instead, it probably would have been like the game you wanted.
Wow.
But no, they have to keep shitting out more Pokemon games.
It makes me wonder what their development structure really is. It's like, are they a big team? Are they a small team? Or is their team just has to be so focused on doing the art for all of the Pokemon because there's so many of them that they don't really get around to having enough members working on, I don't know, the engine-y bits.
Well, I mean, it seems like engines have always been their problem, essentially. Like I said, when the 3DS game ran badly, and you're just like, why? I mean,
Let's just hire some people who have worked with Unreal. Let's go.
I mean, that's what they did for Link's Awakening. That's an Unreal game.
yeah, I think we like when we were talking about it with Sword and Shield. It's just like, why does the Pokemon company not just like get some help from Nintendo? Because surely Nintendo wants Pokemon to sell well.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Why would they not? Nintendo loves money.
So we'll see about that. But at least everyone can be infused about Pokemon Snap for a minute or two, because that's probably how long that game will last.
When's that coming out?
Like June, I think.
Sweet.
I'm not going to knock the short rail shooter. There is merit to making something that's like an hour long, but like hugely replayable.
As long as it doesn't cost 60 quid.
Yeah. It's a tricky one because I'm such a fan of something like Lilac Wars that I still don't think anyone has really made something like that, or as good as the Star Fox and Lilac Wars, like with the so many possibilities that thing offers. To encourage you to play it like 20 or 30 odd times, and it's like, I don't know, Snap could do that maybe.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it had elements of that in the original, like triggering the different routes and everything, but it was still quite small.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
they
gotta
tried
be
it in
bigger
Zero
than
as
the
well. It
original,
just wasn't.
right.
I mean, it has to be.
Yeah.
Like, unless they're going to sell it for like $10,
Yeah.
which they won't. Maybe there'll be 2 Jigglypuffs. And you need to get them both. I mean, the first game didn't have the full roster, did it?
No.
It was a limited set. It didn't have the national decks at the time.
Yeah, but it never was going to.
No.
And this one's never going to either. Obviously, because that would be over 1,000.
I mean, that would be some replayability if they did that.
Yeah, but you just have to pick the Pokemon that look cool.
How would you even
'Cause obviously you
create
want to take pictures.
environments? Yeah, that would suit all 1,000 of those stupid Pokemon.
Well, that's the thing about Pokemon, is like a lot of the different groupings just get shoved into generic environments. Where it's
like you go in a cave.
all the poison Pokemon turn up in the industrial areas.
Right,
Just like,
Because they're hardy to it. Is that the idea? They're hardy to industrial waste.
or they like eating it.
Tasty human poison.
And that's pretty much all that was out of that Pokemon thing.
Pokemon.
There was a couple of other things, but not anything nearly as important as the free actual games, I guess.
You don't want to talk about Post Malone then?
No, not really.
That's the correct response.
I mean, I guess it's the 25th anniversary, but that's like, at this point, I feel like all these anniversaries are just like, no one cares about any of them now. It's like, oh, it's Sonic's 35th anniversary. I mean, they don't care about that, apparently.
Yeah, they still haven't done anything about that, disappointingly. I guess they kind of wrote it off because of COVID, maybe. They're just like, 35 ain't no thing. 35 shouldn't really be anything, though.
Well, no, all these
fives
fives have been completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even the Mario ones, where it's just like, I mean, come on, at least stick with the 10s. Or, make up other bullshit like you and Luigi to fill the gaps.
yeah, Luigi.
Luigi never ends. Right. So
Other
we move on.
conferences.
Yeah, let's talk about that PlayStation State of Play.
State of Play. Which they're all just using the Nintendo Direct format these days.
To an extent. I don't think these State of Plays have work quite so well for Sony as they do for Nintendo.
No.
There's something, I don't know, I struggle to remember the State of Plays.
It's just a bunch of trailers, like, barely tied strung together, really. They don't even have someone presenting.
Well, they do have a voiceover lady.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can't see them.
Well, you can't see them in every Nintendo thing either.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, but the Nintendo voiceover dude is like super unmemorable as well.
Yeah, and they're often like the problem with that structure is they often waste a lot of time just being like, here's the trailer, and now someone will tell you exactly what the trailer just said, and it's like, this game will be on Switch, and it's like, you reckon?
So, did anything stand out at all from the trailers that they showed all in a row?
I mean, it's we've got to talk about the Final Fantasy VII thing, right?
Yeah, that was the final thing they showed, I guess. So that
Yeah,
was, I guess, the
remake
big thing.
Intergrade,
Intergrade.
which is actually the DLC pack. It's not just the name for the PS5 version.
Yeah,
Intergrade is the DLC.
Can you get that on PS4 then? Presumably. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think. I don't know if they said, actually. That's a good point.
Probably.
I'd be
because no one
surprised
has a
if they
PS5. You
Yeah.
can't even buy one.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't. But yeah, like no, Intergrade is supposedly what Yuffie was doing whilst the rest of Avalanche was dicking around in Midgar.
But that's like, I mean, if we're going back to the actual Final Fantasy VII story, it's like that's before they meet her, I guess.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but so I don't think there'll be any crossover there, and they didn't suggest there was. But it's like Yuffie, as she's now
Yuffie.
voiced. Yeah, she at least is aware of Avalanche and is trying to, the storyline's about her ninja crew trying to do something about them or with them or something.
Yeah, I forget what was because it's the other country in the Final Fantasy VII world, and they don't like Shinra either, right? Because the Shinra started a war against them, I think. I barely remember that because it's very like glossed over in the Final Fantasy VII story. The whole other country that with the ninjas.
There was an explosion.
No, that's not that country. Actually, I think that might be a third country that happens in. But yes, I mean, it is fairly ridiculous that we're getting DLC for an episodic game. This is getting kind of dumb.
I mean, yeah, but what did you expect? Honestly, it's like it'll be Kingdom Hearts 3. The last Kingdom Hearts game is getting DLC.
That's not the same. Kingdom Hearts games are technically standalone, except they just have this ridiculous story that ties them all together.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, and also PS5 version, get that 60 frames per second, Joe. I mean, I was hard pressed to see differences in some of their side by sides, like sort of texture detail, and I'm like, really?
If
it looks kind of the same, and then they were like
the problem with the
hair or something, and it's like, oh, the hair actually does look good. The hair is slightly improved. And then volumetric lighting, because everyone loves volumetric lighting. You want your fog? We got it. Did you want fog?
Not particularly.
Well, tough. You're going to get your fog.
Just wasn't that the problem with the original, not the original game, but the original remake?
The original remake, yeah.
Was a lot of it looked good, but some areas just, for some reason, didn't have as good assets, or like the junkyard area didn't have good textures, whereas the opening of the game looked really good.
I mean, maybe. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that's the same sort of. You could say that about any game. You're always going to find spots where it's just like this isn't quite.
I just heard that
the
was
rest of it.
Quite a particularly inconsistent game.
Is it really obvious?
Yeah, well, that's what I'd seen in reviews and heard. So if they fixed any of that, that would be good, because I played the demo and it looked great.
Yeah,
and I'm worried that the rest of the game doesn't.
The demo's fantastic. But yeah, well, we'll all get to find out because it's currently free on PS Plus.
Da, 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 da.
And they announced that the upgrade to PS5 is free as well, which is somewhat unusual on PlayStation. There's not been a lot of that. No smart delivery for you. Yeah, I don't know. I'll make that work. Maybe now it's worth holding off until I get a PlayStation, and then we play it in lovely 60 frames per second. I don't know.
Yeah, what you're going to play in your Series X in the meantime?
Well, in fairness, we might end up playing Final Fantasy on the Series X. I don't know. It's rumored that this stuff may actually turn up there before long.
Cool. That's cool.
But we don't really know what kind of deal they've got with Sony, I don't think. But like, it's rumored that it might be one of those 1-year exclusivity deals.
Interesting.
In which case, we're getting pretty close. That means.
And then for the rest of the Sony state of play,
I mean, there was a Deathloop trailer that
trailers
had some
for
cool
stuff
music.
that we already knew about, like Deathloop and Kenna Bridge of Sighs or whatever.
Yeah, Kena, as it said. It's not Kenna, it's Kena. Like Yuffie, it's Kena.
Yuffie Kena, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that thing continues to look incredibly impressive visually.
Yeah, what it will play like.
I mean, I look at it and I think, like, okay, there's some good stuff here. It looks like they are pulling from classic Zelda combat, like Ocarina of Time style combat. And I think, all right, that seems cool. But then, like, every area in the game we've seen is it's been some kind of convenient clearing in the woods. Like, what happens in between? It's like, are we? I don't know. I think that's slightly missing. But hey, I did notice that at one point it did look like she's Z targeted, and the bands at the top and bottom of the screen closed in, and I'm like, oh yeah, get that focus letterboxing going on.
What else? Solar Ash. I thought that looked quite interesting from the Hyperlife Drifter people. Although how they'll make a full title.
Yeah, trying to skate on the clouds.
Yeah, it looked almost a bit Sonic-y the way that the character was kind of, hyper speeding down lines of rings or whatever.
Yeah, were they rings or were they sort of weird blue globule things? Yeah, I guess like the globules guide you to where you're supposed to be, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think it was like it wasn't the best like 3D showcase ever. No. So, but it's nice that they're giving some time to what you could consider as way more of an indie title.
Yeah, true.
More by the standards of the state of plays. So that's good. Also, Hyperlight was decent in concept, but I don't know. My problem with Hyperlight was like I never felt like I really grasped its story, but that was kind of the point, right? The whole world was bizarre and like abstract and vague, and you never really knew what was going on. It's like, but I'd like a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I worried that this might go that direction as well. And a bit of me thinks it's like, it's a bit of a shame they lost their pixel art style to an extent, because it did look cool. It was a good style. I wonder if they've kept Disaster Piece on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then they did Returnal, which looks more like Returnal. I mean, that game looks fine, and I generally like what Housemarque puts out, but I'm not sure I get why they did the whole Silent Hill angle on it. Like, there's my house in this place. I'm sure a fridge will dangle from the ceiling at one point. I don't know. Bit odd.
I thought that Kung Fu thing, Sifu or whatever, looked potentially interesting, although it was more cutscene than game, I think. It looked like it had a nice art style. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to know what that actually is. Is it like I don't know, like a super hot or something where it's like, here's a combat scenario, get through it, move on.
Yeah, because it's like fighting down a corridor. That would be a bit cramped for a 3D camera.
Well, unless you fix the camera in a spot, or not like fixed, but like have it in a certain perspective. So, which might be what they do. Sifu.
I think that's most of what I wanted to say about the Sony.
Yep.
So
We'll go with that. What else we got? Other Sony news. Destruction All Stars will be coming out soon on, if not already, on PlayStation Plus. And thankfully, they dropped that whole, this is going to be a next-gen $70 title. It will be $20. Rejoice.
Oh, brilliant.
I think they sort of, look. I'm assuming the people that are making it sort of looked at the market and were all like, well, hey, Rocket League's free now. What do we do?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Except it took them like several attempts to get to that point, apparently.
Yeah.
Market
I forget who
research
that game's
took too
made
long.
by. It's made by like someone who's done like good car games in the past or something. So it's can't remember. Anyway, talking about other stuff they might be trying to get right. Those Halo Infinite put out some new screenshots,
Oh, yeah.
and if that, I mean, they didn't put out any video footage, so who knows how real this, how much it is. But they do look improved
Oh, that's good.
over the. I mean, improved in a sort of like.
The lighting and stuff.
Yeah, like not so much like in shadow, I guess, like most of that demo was. So there'll be want to see some video of it though. Oh, naturally. What else we got? Artifact 2 has been cancelled. Or they're stopping on work. What is it? Is it cancelled or is it?
Yeah, I think it's cancelled. Like
Fully
they
on
were
hold.
looking at the numbers at their improvements to the first artifact, and they're not seeing enough to justify
I
carrying
think that's
on.
wise. It's like, do you I don't know? Is the whole card game thing correct done right now?
Yeah, what's
Is
going with
Hearthstone and
Hearthstone?
Runeterra, have they just taken it over? And like, it doesn't seem nearly as much of a talking point anymore.
No, I don't hear anything about even Hearthstone.
I don't
No.
think necessarily the card game situation is the problem with Artifacts. I think it was just a bad one.
Well, that too.
Because they hyped it up and like, we got Richard Garfield.
And it's Dota. Everyone loves Dota.
Yeah, nice try.
Well, a few more cancellations going on it. Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Oh, that's a tongue twister. Is now on. I mean, it's not cancelled, but it's on hold because Paradox have removed the developer from the project.
Right.
I mean, this game has been in development for a long time now.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe Paradox lost patience. I don't know. Who knows what's going on there? But still, that's a move. We're not cancelling it. We're just getting an entirely different studio in to make it. It's like my brother and I were talking about this sort of the other. My brother and I were talking about this sort of indirectly the other day. We were talking about fighting games, and I was surprised to see that Skullgirls got an update the other day, and it's like, hang on a minute, Lab Zero closed. Who the hell are working on it now? And it's like, yeah, it's been taken over by another dev studio, and it's and it's getting updates now, and like a new character dropped, which apparently was from the mobile version of Skullgirls that they'd always planned on bringing it over to the main version. And it's like, yeah, that's weird. And it was like, when else has that happened? Where like another studio has basically just been ousted, sort of when a game's out. It was like, oh yeah, Killer Instinct. That kind of happened, right? Because Amazon bought Double Helix, and then Iron Galaxy had to take over.
Well, and we talked about it very recently. The situation with Planetary Annihilation, where they gave it over to a community dev group.
Right? Yeah, that's even weirder.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a thing. More cancellations. Anthem 2 or Anthem Next. No longer a thing.
They've
decided to pull the plug. I mean, probably a good idea, because, like, honestly, how much money were they expecting to make out of... I mean, it's taken them so long. Like, at this point, it's like, who cares about Anthem 1? And also, like, they were planning on putting this out for free, right? For anyone that owned Anthem. And it's like, where's the money?
Yeah, how does it make sense? Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it was
meant
hard
to be
to
all
justify.
cosmetics, obviously, just like
Yeah.
Destiny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess put it out and have some kind of like buy-in system, make it a free-to-play game in some way. Maybe that was the plan.
I heard that EA were gonna make BioWare make the next Dragon Age like a game as a service, but then they saw that they were having to close Anthem and that Jedi Fallen Order made a bunch of money, so they'd let them just make a normal game.
Good. Yeah, I don't think the other part of this was like there's not been any firings. I don't think they've like got rid of people as a result of this cancellation. They've moved those people that were working on Anthem 2 onto Dragon Age and Mass Effect projects.
Yeah. Just make proper games again.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. So I think BioWare have clearly had a problematic few years, and it seems like I want to hope that it sounds like they're sort of consolidating back onto the right sort of path.
I hope so.
And
I mean,
like this is good news.
Leadership, right? But because they left.
No,
right?
but like this seems like good news, right? Like it's rare that I think a cancellation of a project seems like a good idea, but this seems like a good idea.
Definitely. Stop with all the microtransaction driven bullshit and start making goddamn video games.
Yeah.
And this must be the last chance for BioWare, surely. These next two games.
I mean, you'd think.
If they fuck up Mass Effect as bad as Andromeda, they've got to be done.
Yeah, probably.
I guess I never really looked into what the bottom line for Andromeda really was. It's like, how well did it actually sell? I guess its tail must have been bad because of all the bad press, but like, what was its launch like?
I feel like the launch can't have been great because there was a lot of preview, like non-hype about it.
Yeah, that's
anti-hype.
Filled with anti-hype. What else we got? Some more bad news, I suppose, or weird industry news. The developers of Sunken City are suing their publisher because they claim their publisher, who I think is Nikon, pirated the code for their own game. They'd already had a disagreement with their publisher over something, causing the game to be pulled from some places. But yeah, it sounded like their publisher decided to pirate the game so they could modify the code in a way so they could then put it out on other platforms, trying to cover their asses against them,
right?
Somehow. And it's like the developers who I guess own the IP still, otherwise they wouldn't be able to sue. They sort of turn around and you're going, no, you can't do that. Yeah, and they've put out a number of posts detailing how they think it was done. It's an interesting read, but it's like you can't get. I mean, if anyone cares about their software, you're going to get found out. Like, don't even try. It seems like if they did this is like a properly stupid move. Like it seems impossible that they weren't going to be called out for it.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're just hoping that the world will just move on. There's a lot of things they just seem to do things in a brazen manner that everyone goes, "What?" and then they just go, "Oh, talk about something else."
Never mind. Yeah, well, it's not like the public were going to sue them.
No.
And finally, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk put out a trailer. Well, finally for me anyway, unless someone else has got something to talk about. But I mean, this thing is Jet Set Radio as fuck.
So what is it exactly? Fill me in.
Team
Bomb
Reptile, the developers of
Bomb
Lethal
Rush.
League.
Sounds too much like Bum Rush.
Bum Rush, yeah. Before you get Bum Rush.
I mean, that is pretty much a description of the game. Because it's not skating any longer. It's running.
No.
Literally, Bum Rush.
Yeah, so it's the Lethal League guys making what looks like a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio Future, and
Good for them.
although we've only had tiny glimpses at it, it looks like they're nailing it. Like even the graffiti looked cool. Like that whole system looked. He looked like because he wall runs along the side of an L train, just so he can graffiti the side of it whilst it's moving.
So is it like parkour? Like
yeah, sort of.
Okay.
You can grind still. They're still grinding
on your trainers.
On your shoes. Yeah.
Okay.
Sonic grinding, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So that ash grinding. Yeah.
And fresh beats from Hideki Naganuma, of course.
I mean,
but only one track, presumably.
Yeah, and it won't be funky fresh beats this time, but
unless that's in as well. Maybe they can relicense that and just put the whole soundtrack to Lethal League in that game. Why not?
Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
I mean, I'm interested to see whether they'll put like an Easter egg for Lethal League in. Don't fucking just put Lethal League in that game. just have a side quest where you just go and play a game of Lethal League in the middle of it's like a demo of Lethal League built into the game. Optional side quest.
I mean, I'd be surprised if you didn't bump into the Lethal League characters at some point.
I don't know.
And then people like, how big is his hat? Why is his hat so big?
Maybe. But it doesn't seem like the same universe, I wouldn't have said, even though there's not much to base that off.
I mean, like, Lethal League's visual style was kind of already this anyway.
Yeah,
so
but visual style is not the same as, like, the place it takes place.
I guess. Oh, yeah. Like, a little tidbit I picked up, like that Splatoon 3 thing, like they're like desert town. It is a new town. It's not Inkopolis anymore. It definitely is somewhere else. It's Splatsville.
That's a bad name.
Yep.
Splatsville.
Why would you want to go there? That's like going to like, in terms of like the squid, isn't that like going to like Murderton?
Because how are you supposed to move around? Well, I suppose they only move around in that paint anyway, don't they? Do they move around in?
Well, actually, it should be.
They walk.
Oh, I was about to say it should be better, but I was thinking about it'll be better for not falling into water and dying.
Yeah, because there's not much water about.
But it won't actually affect the ink in any way, because if you look in the lore of Splatoon, you discover that the ink just gets eaten by bacteria, which is why it constantly disappears at the end of rounds.
Yeah,
so it's not getting washed away by rain or anything. It's actually like a bacteria that consumes all the ink.
Yeah, it's a weird temporary thing.
That must be stressful if you're a squid. I suppose you can just jump out and turn into a human thing.
I mean, the real
ink
question
even
is,
come from?
Yeah,
like, because they can refill their ink in their own ink. So where does the initial stash of ink come from?
Yeah, maybe there's another kind of bacteria that produces it, like a machine. What they call von Neumann's machine.
Yeah, maybe. that would kind of be the exact thing that you would expect from a Splatoon lore, is where it turns out it was nano machines all along.
Yeah,
in this future apocalypse.
It was grey goo, but it wasn't grey.
Yeah.
It was brightly coloured. Is that all the news?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about Microsoft Mesh? I'm kind of curious. What's going on with HoloLens?
Yeah, well, I assume it's just what they've rebranded HoloLens is, although it looks slightly different. Although that could just be, a more final version of what HoloLens is. But yeah, they put out a fancy trailer of examples of it working way better than it ever will actually work.
Because I actually tried the HoloLens. It was weird because it was insanely narrow, right? Because I thought, I knew that it didn't have good peripheral vision or whatever. But not only was it narrow left and right, it was narrow up and down. So you had to look through like a tunnel, basically, to see.
Yeah, it was always like, they didn't hide it from it. It's like a tiny little panel in the middle of the screen, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was cool if you looked straight ahead.
But yeah, this new trailer is definitely trying to sell the hologram aspects some more. It does it like almost like the hologram in the Halo trailer, where that guy's looking at the hologram of his wife. It has that same kind of like dotted aesthetic. Except they're trying to say that this is real, but who knows? But then later in the trailer, they do just show like here's someone who's not using that tech, but just has like a 3D model avatar. It's like that's more realistic, I'd say.
More normal, right? Okay. That would be weird if like real holograph. What's it called? Hologram technology like just started immediately mimicking the fictional stuff instead of doing what it could actually do.
Unless it was actually like, unless it was the other way around, and like what they put into the Halo trailer was actually what they had at the time,
right?
in HoloLens.
In mesh, yeah.
So I don't know if mesh is the name of the hardware.
Like, yeah, it might just be like the sort of, like
they're calling it a
platform.
Yeah, they're calling it the platform, like across multiple devices. So I wonder if that's like how you can. Like multiple like input devices, and maybe you can point your phone at things, and then it's like mixed reality there somehow. That kind of stuff. I think it's like a whole new suite rather than just HoloLens.
Yeah.
So HoloLens might still be HoloLens. It will just be
maybe
better. I mean, they're still using the word. They use the word holoportation on their page to describe like sending yourself into someone else's lounge.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And they very much look still like HoloLenses, what they're wearing.
Mostly. Just a slightly better version of them. A few years of iteration. But, it's about time they actually put that out or something, right?
Yeah.
Because it's been around for so long and it kind of faded so much into the background. It's like, have they just given up on it? Nobody knows.
I mean, they are cool, but like, I think of the practicalities of a lot of this stuff. It's like, you still need a table if you're going, or a physical space in which to work if you're going to have one of these.
Yeah, you need a physical space.
I mean, it might not have to be that big of an effort. Like, depends how it exactly works. But I could, even in my room, it's like you just put a white sheet on the bed, and you've got a flat surface. Basically, you've got a large flat surface that you can stand next to.
I don't know what they're showing here in this part of the video, where she's wearing some kind of like, is it like glove? I guess this mesh, actual mesh.
I'm not sure that's
glove.
Related to the mesh. I think that's just like she's learning to use a prosthetic, and that's just like maybe.
Do you reckon it's a prosthetic? Like I wasn't sure.
Well,
if it
they show a doctor,
like
don't they?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like some sort of remote physiotherapy or something that they were using it to track her actions.
Well, maybe, but the way that they're talking about her, like putting the fingers together, is a very sort of prosthetic, like learning to use the mechanical controls.
Yeah, I guess
the fingers.
Mesh. I don't know. I bet me has always liked the idea of having a HoloLens set up, just to, not particularly for the like, I want my table to be like Tony Stark's fake model science project, but just the idea of like having extra information around a screen, maybe, like so I could you can have like extra screen space. Like your screen is for the stuff you want to be looking at, but around it you can have all these like crazy other things. It's like your Skype could actually be like a physical phone or something on your desk. Just be like, there you go, extra screen real estate just by looking around.
Or you just get another screen.
Yeah, but then you've still got to put that screen somewhere.
Yeah, but then you still have to have space for all this holographic shit.
Yeah, but you can put that over anything. That's the thing. Like you can still have it doesn't have to look like a cyberpunk disaster in your house.
So what you're actually worried about is not cluttering your space rather than the actual technology. You just don't want Gnome to be annoyed by it.
I mean,
You want all this stuff to be completely invisible to the outside, so that she doesn't have to be annoyed.
I'd rather not have to buy like 50 odd monitors. I'd rather have like a nice monitor and then HoloLEDs to back it up.
Makes sense.
Mesh. Although
Meanwhile-
calling it Mesh is annoying, actually. The more I thought about it, I thought it was a cool name at first, but then the more I thought about it, is like Mesh Wi-Fi?
Yeah,
That's kind of a thing now.
slightly overloaded, but
Yeah,
most things are.
Mesh. Microsoft Meh.
And also, just their Xbox controllers are having problems with the buttons
Oh yeah,
at the moment. So it's not everyone has problems with their controllers, apart from I guess the Switch Pro controller is fine.
yeah.
I've never heard
remember
any.
hearing something bad about that.
Never
I mean,
heard
I haven't
problems about
crunched
that.
my new Xbox controller yet, so that's something.
Oh, that's good.
I haven't
But it's
crunched the left stick on it.
It's apparently the face buttons that get potentially dodgy, and it's enough so that Microsoft has actually acknowledged it as a problem.
In fairness, I haven't crunched my repaired Xbox controller playing Rocket League yet on PC, but I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I prefer playing Rocket League with the 360 pads
Than the Xbox
than
One
the new
pad.
than the new controllers. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's something about those 360 pads. I need to try and get hold of them.
Yeah,
Or
Told
at
you.
least fix them up.
I told you.
Yeah. Yeah, hardy. That's the thing. They're just
Well,
there's,
that does
a
help.
level, there's a level of solidity to the 360 pads that is rarely found.
and that's the news. Unless you want to talk about Aliens Fireteam.
Nope.
No, let's skip over that one.
Oh, hey. Oh, there was something else. Gearbox got bought by someone, didn't they? Or did someone
What?
buy? Or did Gearbox buy someone?
I don't know. I haven't heard that one, but that would be dramatic.
Yeah, I think we missed it a while back, but yeah. So yeah,
Don't know.
I don't know. I haven't got more than that. Sorry.
Okay. Let's find out for next time what the hell's going on with Gearbox. What's Randy Pitchford doing now?
Yeah, Borderlands 3 developer Gearbox has been bought for 1.3 billion by the Embracer Group. Whoever they are. Swedish based.
They're going to hug them to death.
Yeah, the Embracer Group. Oh, it's the parent company of THQ Nordic.
Right.
So yeah, that happened.
They were always like,
I don't know why they didn't get bought by Epic. Really, that seemed like that was where that was going.
I know the other news is that Mediatonic got bought by Epic, right? Which means
Oh yes, that happened. Yeah.
which means that Ho now works for Epic, which is quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, good for them. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Let's hope they just don't get turned into a Fall Guys content farm.
I mean, they almost certainly will because Fall Guys, they were kind of already there,
There you go.
or at least that part of Mediatonic were already there.
Yeah. Whether the other part, making Murder by Numbers, etc., will survive, we shall see.
There's a third game they put out pretty recently as well. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, yeah, good for them. Fall Guys fits in with Epic's current model, though.
Yeah.
So it's,
Well,
That's
that
fine.
inevitable next step is Rocket
Fall
League
Guys will
style
go
free
free.
to play. Yeah.
yeah. It fits.
And that's the news. It's time for what you've been playing. And we'll start with Zach this time, I believe.
Well, it's been a slightly less complicated couple of weeks, more focused. Except, I guess not, because there has been a couple of weird things. So I guess we should start with those.
Start with weird.
I like weird.
I joined in with one of Rob's Open Transport Tycoon group sessions.
Oh boy, did you?
Oh no, did you destroy?
Not really. I was like
I mean,
third.
Oh, okay.
And as I said last time, those guys are kind of pro.
Oh,
it's-
fair enough.
And I was
And,
like completely relearning everything as well, because it had been quite a while since I played. I was like,
I mean,
how
you did
does
a
this
way
work
better.
again?
You did a way better job than me, who only just discovered that train signals need to be directionally faced.
That was the thing. So, like, they made the map.
I spent the entire game struggling with my damn trains.
Yeah, it was like the map
only
was
for like
smaller.
halfway through the day for me to go, do I have to turn my signals around to face the right way?
The map was supposedly smaller to make people actually have to compete with each other a bit more, which you'd expect would mean like people would notice what other people were doing a bit more. But despite Rob continuously complaining about Train 6
God damn it.
Train 6
for like 4 hours or something, no one went to look at what he was doing. And then as soon as I looked at what he was doing, I was like, oh yeah. And then when I went and looked at it, was pretty much the exact moment when Rob himself realised it, where it's like, oh, you can turn the signals around so the signals have to be facing the direction the train is going.
I mean, I mean, this is the problem with like old school UIs, I guess. It makes absolutely no indication that that's a thing. Like, and it's one of the weird things where you click like most of the stuff in the UI, and you have to pick the direction of the thing you want to put on the board. Like
when you're putting down,
when you're putting down roads or something, you don't just drag a road out. You pick, I'm drawing a road in this direction and drag the direction out. Like,
unless you're using the specific tool that lets you drag in any direction, but. Yeah,
what? There's a tool that lets you do that?
The little cross one. You've got the individual directions, but then, like the rails, you have the individual like track pieces where it's like, this is the diagonal button that only lets you place diagonals. But then there's the one where it's just like, you just drag in a direction and it draws it out.
For the love of... Actually, I thought that was like, you had to explicitly pick the cross tool to build like crossroads.
Well, I mean, it does help with that. But...
or cross rails, like, you know, to be like, I want to just have this as a proper crossing, not like where trains can't turn or something like that. Like,
but then the other thing that clearly didn't help Rob in this situation was that because they had at least told Rob to use the path signals, which definitely helps.
They were everywhere, and they'd also told me like the correct locations in which to put them. It's like, I'll put them outside your stations. But things like that. But the
trouble with the path signals is that the normal path signals, trains are allowed to go through them backwards, but they don't count as like a stopping point on the signal like routing. So even though Rob's trains could go against the flow of the signals, they weren't acting as signals because they weren't facing the direction the trains were going. So that was why his trains always would like occupy huge lengths of track for no apparent reason.
Yeah, because they have this thing, like, at least there's this option you can turn on in OpenTTD where you can see like it will slightly darken bits of track that a train is reserved for use. Which is
what the path-based signals are for.
So I was watching
like a block,
Yeah, so I was watching it and going like, why is this train that is parked at a station just reserving the entire line for itself so no one else can move? It's like, this makes no sense. There are signals everywhere. How is it doing that? And then actually what triggered me to think of this was I went and I can't remember whose it was, but I looked at some line and I noticed a signal with a visual pointing a direction, just like looking at the visual of it, and I'm like, I haven't seen a signal with that frame of animation. Why have I not seen a signal? Oh God,
because they're facing the wrong way.
and I have control. Like, so it turns out you have to click the signal again to turn it around.
Right, which it doesn't show you when you place it.
No, and there's absolutely no indication that that's a thing.
Is there a tooltip if you hover over the signal? I remember the tooltip that pops up there says stuff like hold control to make the other grades of signals and that kind of stuff.
Or they normally have, like, is it hold shift to see the price of it instead of placing it?
Yes. I don't know if that one does say click multiple times or not, or whether that's just like inherent knowledge that you're meant to know about transport tycoon.
Man, if it did, if it's there, it completely passed me by. So
would you have even looked at that tooltip specifically for that? Because you wouldn't have known to look at it for a start.
No, but the weird thing was this only was a problem this time around. Like,
that was what I was curious about, because this game was the one where this happened, but Robin played this other game, and I was like, well, what happened in that game?
Yeah, the last time I played it, I was using signals in the exact same way, but without any knowledge of direction, and I didn't get into nearly as much trouble with the trains. They're all fine.
You're just placing them down the right way by accident.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe like my lines were separated enough. Well, in fairness, my network was quite a lot more complicated this time. I had a lot of industries that needed lines to cross over and things like that, so proper signalling was important. And I guess I'd abandoned my other things went badly for me this time, like really badly. It's like I couldn't like. By the time, last time I played, I got the drop on everyone on the seafront. Like I started doing that before anyone else, and so I started making. I caught up at one point on profit simply because I was doing the oil rig stuff before anyone else, but I didn't have that advantage this time. Because none of the oil rigs turned up near me for starters, so I didn't see them. Yeah, and then for some reason my boats weren't making money, and I didn't quite understand what that was about. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can play that game as much as they do. They were playing it again this weekend, and I'm like, nope, hard pass.
Yep.
It's like I feel like. Well, I mean, this is just how I always play Transport Tycoon. Is just like I need less default map settings to feel comfortable. I never liked how the map generates in like base Transport Tycoon. It's just too cluttered. But then the trouble with making it less cluttered is it's not as good for multiplayer then, because then you've got very limited options of like where you want to build, where it's actually worth building if you've got much fewer industries and they're much further apart. It makes you have to, and then that leads to problems of competition of like you can't if you have to like commit to building something, but you have to tell people that you're going to be doing that essentially because it's going to take so long that you're having to reserve destinations ahead of time and stuff. And I don't think that's that's not a great plan in multiplayer really.
I mean,
you need somewhat amount of chaos.
Yeah. You need a certain amount. I mean, the thin map was interesting. It was an interesting idea. I fortunately ended up like somewhat uncontested, which is nice.
Yeah, like
because I need it because I was still bottom of the table even without competition. So because I don't really understand. Like, it's not like at the point of the game, like early on, like even like my network wasn't exactly much smaller than anyone else's, but it was still making a lot less money. And it's like before I even had Trainageddon. Yeah, there's a lot about that game I don't fully understand. Even though it's a pretty simple game in some aspects.
Yeah.
There's clearly tricks to it that I don't know. Anyway, shout out to that crew. They do make that kind of fun because they're constantly berating each other.
Bands.
There's a lot of bands. So it's kind of fun, but I just can't dedicate myself to do it every weekend like they kind of are right now. I got a message saying someone they'd gone back to that map and had taken over my company just to replace my trains.
What?
It was like I needed to upgrade your trains.
Needed to point your signals the right way.
Well, I did all that once I learned it. Yeah, and then everything was fine.
Right.
Yeah, so that was fun.
There was that.
But I need to play other games. I need to finish other games for content for this cast.
And then the other thing that I also played with Rob last week, there was a free weekend of Deep Rock Galactic, which is a game that had been on my wish list for quite a long time, and I was always curious about.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by that, to be honest. It was a good time.
What's it called? Deep Rock Galactic?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about mining, kind of.
Sounds engaging.
So not really. It's basically like procedurally generated Left 4 Dead almost, kind of.
Yeah.
But with like mining also. You're trying to collect the resources, but then like you have to, fight off the enemies while you're doing it. So you're trying to dig through this tunnel network.
Right, because in Left 4 Dead you're moving constantly through the levels.
Yeah.
Do you have to like stop and mine a lot in this one?
Yeah, and the enemies aren't quite such constant threats in this, right. And also they do spawn waves, but they're much like sparser, or at least in the low difficulty levels. I'm sure when you turn it up, it gets a bit more crazy.
Sure, you get the little bursts every now and then, but they're not too bad. They're not likely to kill you, and then you get the swarm phases, which are a bit like the hordes. Obviously, you'll get a more sustained burst of enemies.
But the real trick to it is, of course, procedural generation, where it's just like you're in these procedurally generated caves, which can, create its own problems to solve, and you have the 4 different classes of dwarves with their different tools for like navigating the environment, and then teamwork happens, hopefully.
Yeah. Then teamwork. And lots of shouts of rock and stone.
Yes.
Rock and stone!
But yeah, you have the different skills. With like the main, I think it's maybe slightly too reliant on the grapple zip lines.
Right.
Because the gunners...
You need to have at least one of them that has that ability.
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with the engineer's platform gun and only have that, but the zip lines are just so much more useful for getting over large holes or going up. It's very useful, and
we did occasionally draw a bit of a bad straw, didn't we, on a short straw on some of the levels, because it's it made us the escape route on a couple of them was so confusing and long. It's just there's no way we're getting back to the drop pod.
Well, there was the one time where that really happened was just we forgot where we were going, and we probably should have just followed the mule, because it leaves a convenient breadcrumb trail for you to follow.
Yeah.
And I when we were talking about the escape in that level, we were saying that I was saying we were just this bit is going to screw us up, and I knew it was going to happen, but then we still tried to do it that way, and it screwed us up.
The problem is with that section, the mule would have because it was basically a sheer cliff face that we had to zip line back up.
Yeah,
the mule would have taken a different direction because
the mule could climb up the walls, so it might have just gone straight up that cliff, and then we would have seen the. I don't think it did come through that room, did it? I don't know. I don't know.
Went
through that room at all.
That's what I mean. I don't remember seeing the green breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I think it went a different route, which we probably could have followed much easier. But yeah, it was always
going to be tight, that one. It seemed nigh on impossible. And
also, I don't think when we were playing me, Rob, and Kippers, I don't think we got to the mission type that is super. I feel is the one that is super critical on the zip lines, where you basically the cave is much more just one cave, and you have a central mining rig thing in the middle, and you have to go out to the edges of the cave to pick up things and bring them back. But because it's just one big cave, that's a lot more vertical around the edges. The passages come out high up on the walls, and that one just.
Oh, have I lost you?
No.
Oh, I missed you there. Yeah, the audio just cut out for a second there. I got as far as high up on the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be so inconvenient to have to do that with platforms. To build a chain of platforms you could jump up onto all of these different ledges. So yeah, when I was trying it in single player, I was still using the gunner with the zip lines. And in single player, you get a little drone assistance. Although much like the AI in Left 4 Dead, it's too powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You just barely even need to fight. The drone will just do it for you, which is helpful because it's single player, but maybe too helpful. Although then again, it also runs into a problem where there's situations where you can't fight, because some of the enemies have a lot of armor, especially on the front, and you weak point in the back. But when you're playing in single player, because you're the only player, the enemies will focus on facing towards you. So you just have to wait for the bot to shoot them, because the bot flies behind them and tries to shoot the weak spot, but you can't do shit.
Yeah. It's not really designed for that. Or if you're at least playing with the engineer, I suppose you could put a turret down and try and
kite it around.
And kite it so its butt is in front of the turret.
But yes, it's quite a casual little game.
Yeah, it's decent. I had a good time with it.
But as usual,
we played it for quite a bit on the free weekend, in fact.
Well, yeah, squeeze out as much as you can.
Mm.
But it is, exactly the same problem as Left 4 Dead. You need people to play it with, and you need a consistent group of people, ideally.
Yeah, it was decent with 3, and four. I don't think having 4 is a necessity.
No,
in that
you
game,
definitely get away with 3 or 2.
Even 2, yeah, 2 was okay, but it was definitely better as a 3.
Can you get Left 4 Dead on a modern console or on a TV split screen, maybe through Steam, or is it possible? Like we used to play?
Does it support remote play? I don't know.
But even then, the split screen is the problem, right? You can all be in the same room and do it, or all be on the same machine like you could on 360.
You can't do that anywhere now.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Well, Left 4 Dead 2 says it supports remote play, so remote play together, which is the one that means multiple players in the same system.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't think they had a split screen in. Oh, maybe they do now, but that would be cool.
Just curious.
Yeah, that'd be neat.
You know, as I've always said, I keep saying I want to go back and play Left 4 Dead, but that's not with that does need 4 people really.
Yeah,
I don't think you can get away with 3. Because as soon as there's it's not to do with like how many people there are, it's to do with as soon as there's a bot, it removes all the challenge because the bots just murder all the special inventors.
Right.
Yeah, they are a bit good at that.
So yeah, that's that. That's Deep Rock. And then I played some
Durg.
Yes, Durg. I played some DUSP. Played some more Dyson Sphere program. And I did in fact start a new save file, and you know, as predictable, it like took half as long to get through the entire game because it's like, now I know what I'm doing. So I went through it again in a much more efficient fashion, where I didn't have to abandon my home planet because it was a big mess. It's like, now my home planet is actually useful. Although I did also set the resource density to like half, so basically all the resources on my home planet have run out. So it's now just importing. And then I went and built another part of a Dyson Sphere around a different blue star, a blue giant this time though, which actually isn't really any more like power output than a regular blue star. It's still only like 2 times power or whatever. It's just bigger. And then I unfortunately discovered that, like, much like how the swarm doesn't account for the inverse square law, the Dyson Sphere is actually even worse in that it does it completely the wrong way round. Like, when you build a small sphere, it uses less parts because it's smaller, but the power output is based on how many parts you use to build it.
Oh.
So actually building a huge sphere gives you way more power output. Even though that's not how that should work at all.
No.
It should give you the exact same power output.
It should be the same. Yeah.
Although I suppose, and also proportionally, the small sphere should give you more power faster because you're covering a larger inverse square area.
Yeah.
With the same amount of parts. But it doesn't.
I guess it depends on the max capture rate of your equipment, right? Of your cells.
Well, I mean, it's meant to be 100%. That's the whole point. Then,
if it was that good, you could just put it on the surface of the sun, just encase the sun without any internal volume.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that the game doesn't do any, like, you know, simulation of, is like the actual structural stresses of this whole thing. You can build it as big or small as you want. It doesn't really matter. You build a Dyson Sphere around a black hole, even though that should be even more ridiculous. So yeah, having got through that a second time and done it better, I'm like, okay, I think I'm good with this game for a while now. We can just wait for
updates.
Yeah, wait for some more updates to go through. They still have been in like just patching mode so far. There hasn't been any new content yet. Although weirdly, ever since it released, there's been like a little branch in the tech tree that's like coming soon. So you can see that there's going to be a few new techs there. And evidently someone has just like scraped the game data, because if you go and look on like some of the websites that have sprung up to do like calculations or whatever, do the maths outside of the game, those new things that are theoretically meant to be in a tech tree, they already know like the stats of these new buildings and like what they make. It's like the game data is there, it's just not fully finished yet. But it seems like those new buildings are not actually going to be anything like new content-wise. They're basically going to be the equivalent of Factorio's like beacons, like a building that speeds up other buildings in the vicinity.
Right.
Which again, you know, just continue to rip everything out of Factorio.
Naturally.
Oh, and speaking of which, I realised as I was playing more of it, I realised another thing that I like. This one took longer to notice, where it's like what it's ripping off. But when you're warping around in space and like all the planets and stars, they have icons and like little name tags or whatever. The icons and name and like font is Eve. It's just Eve's font.
Oh, it's just the same font.
They've just used the exact same space icons and font as Eve has.
That's quite funny.
Which again, I was like, not to go to like generic podcast racism or whatever, but like this Chinese company, also Eve is well known for being like, they have their whole Chinese server because they had to make a completely separate server for the Chinese market, and so it's quite a well-known game in the Chinese market. It's just like, yeah, this seems to track. They've just ripped off Eve's space thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. And then the main thing I played was I finally did get round to actually continuing with Stardew Valley to see the new content, which I got all the way up to the edge of the new content and then stopped. But then I was like, okay, let's actually do this. And it's kind of weird because you unlock this like tropical island, and then when you go to that island, you have to unlock that island in like parts essentially by like collecting these hidden golden walnuts, which then allow you to unlock the different facilities of this island. But then one of the things that you unlock on this island is just like another farm.
Oh, great.
So you can like basically, and well, once you rebuild the farm building, because it's like a ruin initially, you can actually, it gives you a bed so that you can actually sleep on that island and stay there.
You can just live there.
Rather than having to go home all the time.
On your new farm.
Yes, and also weirdly, the new farm, because of this being a tropical island, is like it's not affected by seasons, so it's actually more like a new greenhouse. Because like the greenhouse in the original farm isn't affected by seasons, but then neither is this island, and it's way bigger than the greenhouse. So it's like it's an even better greenhouse. Grow even more of one crop forever.
Just bananas.
Well, you could, but banana trees are inefficient because they're a tree.
Mm.
Grow pineapples. That's the actual fruit you want.
Nothing but pineapples.
But yeah, there's this new farm. There's unlocking the stuff on the island is actually kind of, it has lots of little mini puzzles essentially. So that's at least interesting the first time, I guess. Not so much when you actually know what all the solutions are. Then there's the volcano, which is like another sort of dungeon with like, all the fighting that Stardew has in it. So there's the volcano, you go in there and fight way through, and then you get to like the top of the volcano has the forge where you can like upgrade all your tools and weapons and like combine rings to basically put the bonuses of two rings into one slot essentially. So that's like the super end game upgrades are there to prolong everything even more. And then once you collect enough of the walnuts, you unlock the walnut room, Mr. Key's walnut room. And that is like the ultimate end game content, because I think I mentioned last time they introduced like the big missions where you have these missions that last like a week or sometimes even longer, like 2 weeks or a month, where you have to like do a lot of something, like harvest 100 of one crop or kill 50 enemies in a week or whatever, 50 specific enemies. But then once you get into the walnut room, there's like the advanced version of that, where it's like these missions are even more hard, where it's like farm 500 of this one crop in a month, or like now it completely reworks the enemy like progression in the dungeons and just makes all of them harder for a week, and then try and make it through that. And then if you can succeed at those, you get this special currency that lets you unlock even more ridiculous endgame items, where it's just like, do you want the ability to have your sprinklers water even more area? You can do that. Or you can upgrade the endgame sword even more. Or you can just get the ability to go into people's houses whenever. You get the key to the town. So you can go into people's houses at any time of day to see what they're doing.
That's creepy.
So yeah, and then that room with those Uber missions also has like the perfection tracker, where it actually keeps track of like if you want to fully 100% the game.
Is that even possible?
I mean, kind of. It's not. It doesn't. Well, I wouldn't say it's that bad. I mean, most of them are actual achievements anyway.
Right, yeah.
Just like full perfection is maybe a little bit further than that. Like, because it involves, I think for full perfection, you have to have like all 4 of the obelisks and the golden clock. Because the four obelisks are like teleporters, basically, that teleport you to different places in the world instantly for free, rather than having to use a consumable item. And then the golden clock like prevents weeds from spawning on your farm and prevents fences from decaying, which is like not a good reward considering how much it costs, because the golden clock costs like 10 million.
Right.
And then each of the obelisks is like 1 million or 500,000. So I've finally got to build one of them at this point. I spent 1 million to build the warp obelisk to take me directly to the island. So now I can just freely teleport back and forth between home and the island.
That's good.
Which is kind of helpful. But yeah, so that's really what the like super perfection is. But what I've been looking at is the achievements, where I'm just like, do I think I can 100% the achievements? Because there's a couple in there that are like, some of them I've just never got round to doing, like completing the museum collection. I'm 1 item short, and it's being a real bitch because it's like there's a new thing that got added, I think in this patch, or it might have been the patch before. But there's a new item you can get from a trader in the desert that basically is a thing you break open and it gives you a random artifact. So it's meant to make completing the collection a bit easier, because then previously all the artifacts, they spawn in specific locations in the world, but you only get like 1 of these artifact spots per day or whatever.
Right.
So it can be quite a ridiculous amount of random, where it's like you only have a 3% chance of finding this one specific artifact every time you dig up one of these artifact spots, and they only respawn like every day.
Oh, blimey. That's low.
But then, so there's this new item that you can get from the trader, where you can just break it open and it has a chance of giving you the artifacts. And somehow I bought like probably 40 or 50 of them. And I think I've got every single artifact it's possible to get out of them, except for the one that I need.
Oh, God damn it.
Which is just really annoying. And it's literally the only artifact I'm missing in the whole museum.
And you know it is possible to get it from those items.
Yeah, because I looked it up on the wiki.
It's just really unlucky.
But yeah, so that sucks. But then, like, probably the third most annoying achievement is craft every item. Because, well, firstly, a lot of things you never actually, there's no reason to craft because they're not actually worth crafting. But you have to go through, you have to unlock all the recipes in the game firstly. So you have to, go around to all the different places that they unlock, all the different shops that sell blueprints or whatever, and buy them. And then you have to craft every one of everything.
Right.
That's kind of annoying. Then there's an achievement for earning 10 million, which I mean is like, that's just a time thing. But I've only earned like 2 million so far in 2 whole years. I mean, it should ramp up in theory, I guess. I think I can probably earn like more than 1 million a year now, maybe. But then again, that's a lot of work, I guess. Because at a certain point, you want to automate as much as you can, but Stardew isn't a game for like full automation or anything. You're still having to go around and pick crops or plant crops.
Yeah,
maybe not water them.
It's not exactly Factorio, is it?
No.
Yeah.
And then the worst achievements, there's a pair. There's an arcade game inside Stardew, where in the bar there's an arcade game that you have to beat and then beat without dying.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Which is very annoying.
It's not even the same game.
No. It's like a weird sort of Isaac-esque like twin stick shooter thing.
I mean, is it at least fun?
Not really. It's kind of slow and like, and I tried it a couple of times. I'm just like, this seems like this is going to be a real pain in the ass to try and beat this without dying. And then I looked up discussions about tactics to see whether there was anything that I was obviously missing. But then, of course, helpfully, those discussions it's like, seems to be confusion even within the discussions of people talking about it, because it's like, does luck affect the drop of power-ups in this game? People on the internet seem to think so, but then you go and look on the wiki and there's just a link to a Twitter post by the dev that says no. So apparently not, maybe. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off. But all the other achievements I should be able to get in time. But I'm not sure if I can sustain enthusiasm for getting 10 million.
For getting the perfection.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous. So maybe I won't 100% Stardew, but we'll see. I might at least be able to stick with it for a bit longer before I fade off again.
You'll be back. They'll add some more bullshit content.
And then things that I haven't been playing that I guess we can very briefly mention is like apparently the new characters for Smash Brothers came out immediately.
Yep.
Haven't been into that.
I haven't played them either, but yeah, I hear that they're quite good actually. I've heard like.
Well, it's the classic DLC problem of like DLC characters always seem to be really powerful.
They might be a bit too OP,
but they might get
right
nerfed, maybe.
OP sword characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think from what I've seen of like the highlights that have already started appearing, it seems like they just have a move that will just destroy your shield in one move.
Ooh, nasty.
From full. It's not really like it's weird because it's not actually like a one hit move. It's like it's a multi-hit move, but because of shield stun and everything, it kind of locks you in and then it just wipes your entire shield out.
So like, but it's not like a charge move like the existing shield breakers are.
I don't know. I don't think
it is like the Fire Emblem shield breakers.
It seems like it seems like it might have a specific execution where to get you locked in, because the only time I've seen people doing it is like you have to fall and like initiate the move in midair, but then like land so the rest of the spin hits. I don't know if that's actually how that works or whether that's just how people have
figured out to do it.
Yeah. There's a glitch effectively or a trick,
or it's just like that's how you pull off a really slow move fast enough to not have people avoid it, maybe, that you have to fall onto them.
Well, yeah, that's a thing.
But yeah, I mean, apparently they're quite powerful, but everyone, that's the trouble with looking at like thumbnails on YouTube, is like literally every character that's come out so far has, all I've seen is thumbnails being like, they're so OP. Although it has to be said that Steve is definitely like in the meta. He's like, he's definitely competitive. Once people figure out the blocks and crafting.
Sure. Imagine the skill ceiling for Steve must be pretty high. But...
Well, I'm sure all the Pac-Man players are just like, yeah, let's do this as well.
I watched a video yesterday, in fact. It was one of those, it was a deep dive into Blur.
Right.
That failed racing game that we love.
Really?
Yeah, someone did like a 44-minute deep dive into why it failed, kind of thing. Like, but came away thinking it's a great game, but this is why it failed. And yeah, it's a decent video. I can't remember. I think Whitelist or something did it. Anyway, yeah, it's decent if you can find it. I can't remember exactly who it was by. But anyway, they were talking about like this game does actually have like a pro scene still, and like that an obscenely high skill ceiling actually does exist in that thing. And they were showing off like there's a perk you can get where you can just drift to nitros. So of course nitro chaining is a thing where you're just constantly drifting around the track and constantly nitroing to earn more nitro, and just doing it in a sort of beautiful ice skating dance around the track. And it's like, oh, this is so good. This is why games like this are like a underrated, because it's like there is a pro level and it's phenomenal to watch.
Well, I feel like that kind of pro level is like that where it's just
it's sort of game breaking.
Yeah, it's like, almost a glitch where it's just like it separates the skill levels too much almost.
Yeah.
And it becomes the situation where it's like there's just one tactic. You have to do it, or otherwise, because it's so overpowered.
That's kind of true in Mario Kart, though, isn't it? Technically.
Yeah, if you know how to do or if you're good enough to do the constant drifting, it's pretty much the same, actually. Really.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Blur is, right? It's a combination of Project Gotham and Mario Kart, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of Wipeout in there.
Yeah, maybe a bit.
What else do you play, Rob?
Oh boy, right, okay. Maintenance check. What have I continued to play? River City Girls. I'm still working on my second. I'm working on my second playthrough of that. I'm right at the end basically, but I got to the end of the first playthrough soon after. Actually, it wasn't that far from where I was last time I talked about it, but I didn't quite level up my character to max level. So but I noticed, like, when I looked at the character roster, that hey, the other character had been leveling up as I've been defeating bosses, because it was still gaining the XP from bosses I hadn't. From boss fights I hadn't played as that character. It's like, oh, I've got a bit of a head start. Maybe I'll get to max level on the hard mode playthrough in New Game Plus. So let's do that. Let's put it in hard mode, get the other character, and go through it again. And there's another collectible this time round as well. So it's like, oh, I can go find secret cats. And so it gives me a reason to go through it. It basically just gave me an excuse to go beat up 1,000 more dudes, and I still can't put it down. It's still fantastic. I don't know why. It's like all you're doing is like just standard beat 'em up stuff. Just go, like, enter screen, load of dudes are there, beat 'em up, move on, and that's all you kind of do. That's all there is.
That's all you need if it plays well.
Yeah, I just can't stop. I can't stop. I love the music. Like, the soundtrack is properly great. Yeah, it just keeps going. I'm missing a couple of cats though. I don't know where these cats are. Got to backtrack across the entire game now to see where I've missed these 2 cats. Damn it! I looked up, like, because you get a couple of charms I got a couple of charms for the first playthrough that are literally labeled as "what does this do?" And if you have them both equipped, it's like, presumably there's a secret related to them, but I haven't found what that was. So I looked it up, and it's like, oh right, when I get to the last boss with these, as long as I have those equipped, it's like something different will happen. I haven't spoiled myself on what that is, but it's like, oh, okay, cool, let's go. I'm looking forward to going into that and seeing what happens. I wish the nitpicks, the story does end up going pretty much nowhere in the end. It's like, but maybe there's a secret ending that will, like, rescue it.
Oh well,
if you just play it once, the whole thing seems entirely pointless. Which is kind of funny in itself, I suppose. But the ending is a bit of a cop out. So I'm still playing that. Still think it's great. I actually ended up spending a surprising amount of time going back to Pacer.
Oh yeah.
What was Formula Fusion and was then rebuilt as Pacer, because I'm playing it again with more of an eye to, like, what's actually changed, and it's like, because now I've unlocked I'm getting to more of the tracks in campaign mode. The variety is getting larger the more you get through the new career mode. I'm noticing what they changed and what they added, and it's like, yeah, okay, some of the tracks they have dialed back the complexity a little bit. Some of the tracks they've just straight up fixed, so their problems aren't so egregious. Like, there were a good couple of tracks in Formula Fusion where, like, the speed of the game seemed completely against the track design. And don't get me wrong, there is still one track in particular which I think is garbage, and it's just like completely designed against the speed of the game, like Manhattan, which is one of the nicest looking levels, based on Manhattan, obviously.
Manhattan,
yeah, just has it's just too windy, and it's not just windy, it's windy over crests in a couple of it. So it's like, it's impossible to see where you're going, or incredibly difficult to see where you're going. And because, like, as the speed of the craft gets so much faster, it's like you're doing these incredibly tight turns.
Yeah.
And it's super difficult to navigate well. Which I guess, get your skill ceiling, I suppose, that way, but it's not much fun to traverse that bit of track. It just feels like a bad bit of track design, which is a real shame. And there were a couple of levels in the previous one where there were jumps that you would get into, which, if you were traveling too fast, you would just jump into the ceiling.
Smash straight into the ceiling.
You'd smash into something and not land where you're supposed to land, which may still be a problem because I haven't been racing at elite class yet. I'm at the one below the fastest but one speed at the moment.
Venom.
Well, it was like Rapier, wasn't it? And then there was Phantom.
Phantom. Yeah.
So yeah, it's in Wipeout terms. So I'm kind of at Rapier level right now. But yeah, those seem ironed out, which is nice. And I definitely think the career structure makes a bit more sense now. You're going through doing. It's effectively just a set list of challenges.
Right.
Go through, do this race here, come first. Do this race here, come first. But there's also a nice little wrinkle thrown in, which you don't have to do, but if you want to, you can go and try and do these team goals on every level as well. So it's like, on this level, you need to at least you not only win, but also get a perfect lap.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Get round without crashing, or make sure you do this much damage to people during this race.
That sort of sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I think for the most part it works and it's nice. Like, I wish it was presented a little better. So like if you had a target you were trying to hit, it would be nice if there was an on-screen indication of that. Because you basically have to run the race, and then at the end, when you get dumped back to the menu, you can see whether you completed it or not. There's no like indication. Yeah, you did it while you're doing it.
That would be cool if it had it on screen, like a...
Yeah, I think it needs a tracker, especially the ones where there is a damage number required, where it's like, deal this much damage to people, because there's no damage numbers in the game, so I have no idea how much damage I'm doing. So it'd be nice if there was an on-screen ticker to say how much I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, there's things like that where that it could be cleaned up a bit, but the idea is sound. I like it. Yeah, I think it's all right as it turns out. I might have been a bit harsh on it before, but like in its current state, it's all right.
I mean, it's definitely good to hear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll probably plug away at that every now and then still, which is good. I am turning off, I'm being a bit more thorough with, they still got that sound issue I talked about where the music level just seems all wrong. And I've basically turned like most of the other sound down to nothing, and it still doesn't seem quite right. So yeah, audio design needs a bit of work, but yeah, I'm planning for it. And I've basically turned off half the soundtrack right now for being either too ambient or having too much of a...
You're too goddamn ambient.
Yeah, or just having too much of a lead in to when it gets good. Like, that is the problem with the soundtrack. There are the tracks are sometimes just included in full, whereas Wipeout in the more recent entries has tended to take a cut of them to some degree, just to make sure that like by the time the race starts, you're actually getting music.
Edit them down. Yeah.
But that's not to say the soundtrack is bad. There's a lot of it. It just perhaps needed the curation of it in places is questionable. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I don't mind a bit of experimental music, but there's a place for it in a racing game, isn't there? There's tracks that are literally just like noise and bloops, and like not necessarily rhythmically at times. It's like, yeah, this isn't fun for my ears.
Not while you're trying to zip around a track that isn't quite designed perfectly.
So Pacer, yeah. Also revisited Fuser a little bit, getting the ers in. River, Fuser, Pacer. I played it with keyboard and mouse controls this time because I'd been trying to play it with controller before through the TV and through the sound button. I tried it with keyboard and mouse for convenience on PC. It might actually play better that way, I think, because it is kind of cursor driven. So using the mouse is helpful, but it's taking a little while for my head to map to the keyboard controls for some things. Like you can do most things with just the mouse. But there will be times where you need to shift click to do some actions instead of just clicking a thing. So it's taking me a little while to adjust, but that might be the better way to play it. It's probably bad news given that they're just the Switch version's coming out soon. So don't play it on Switch, play it on PC.
PC.
Unless they've got touch controls, maybe the touch controls would be
I mean, have you ever played any game on Switch with touch controls?
No.
How many years has it been?
You might have played a game with touch controls, you just wouldn't have ever used them.
Yeah, I just haven't. Yeah.
Is there a single game after DS was all about touch controls?
I mean,
Although
there were
with
a
the
couple of.
stylus.
There was a rhythm game at launch that was only touch controls that came out on Switch. You couldn't play it any other way, but
Yeah.
I didn't play that.
Can't even remember the name of it.
Nope. Yeah. So, and I think that it's had a few patches recently, Fuses, and not just to add DLC, which there's a lot of it. In fairness, they keep adding stuff to that game if you want it. It's expensive, but it's there. But they've added a couple of things so you can actually for freestyle mode, they've added more expressive stuff that isn't necessarily constrained by the limitations of the game. So of the game part. So you can actually build they call it hot clips, I think, where you can use 4 keys on the keyboard to actively turn on and off all 4 of the decks as you like quickly. So if you want to do a hot cut a little bit of the tracks together, so each bit is only firing at certain times, you can now do that and save that down. So the music tools are getting improved, but I also think they've patched the difficulty level, because I don't think the campaign is great for actually for how it ranks you and stuff like that. So it seems like they've just made the targets a lot easier, because I've struggled to get anywhere near a 5-star, often struggling to get the 4-star reward on some levels. And when I played it again recently, I was 5-starring everything. It's I think they've just made it a lot easier to get those.
I see. Fair enough.
Which is probably wise, because when you 5-star, you get your experience at the end of each level is based on how many stars you got. So, and you need the experience to level up your character, because you need to earn the money in order to unlock more songs. And it's and all you really want is the songs.
Is the songs, right?
So I think it's they've probably balanced that a little better. Yeah, it was all right. I had a good time. I still don't think that campaign design is very good, and I wish the game part was better. But they've improved it a little bit since I first played it.
At least it's positive change, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the most annoying thing is I'm going through the level at the moment where they introduced the riser, which is super cool. There's a button basically on your deck that you can push, and it just triggers a build up, and and then drops everything into you can queue up a whole set of new tracks if you want, and it will switch to your queued up library at the end of the riser, and you can do funky stuff leave it as it is and just rise up, or there's a smart riser which will pick one of the tracks that you've got queued and change the tempo and key to match that track dynamically.
Okay.
Or there's just random mode which will change the tempo and key randomly whilst doing a rise effect, and they are cool. But but the campaign kind of ruins the effect by when it asks you to do one of those. It's the stupid characters that they have, these promoters or whatever, will sort of say, "Boom, yeah, that's how it's supposed to go," or something like that.
Dirt 3 people.
The moment the riser lands, so you don't even get to really hear it properly because it fades it out slightly, so you can hear this voiceover ruin it. And it's why? Why would you do that? It's just take the promoters out of that game and it would be a billion times better.
Just need an optioned setting to just disable them completely.
Yeah, I wish the whole because the campaign is a tutorial, I wish they would structure it so there was a tutorial before the level. So the level but the start of the level would be, okay, here's the new things we're going to do this level, and it's a little intro to how it works, and then the level starts for real. And so you could just skip that next time, rather than the levels being interrupted by the way, here's how you do this thing.
Right, in the middle of when you're trying to play.
In the middle of and it's
well, they should have done it how Rhythm Heaven and those games do it, where it's just the tutorials are they're weirdly built into the world of the game almost, where it's this is literally in the practice for this thing we're about to do.
Yeah, something like that. It would make way more sense if it was just structured differently, having because you could literally be in the middle of the level and it will be oh, if you want to, you can play this instrument and you can freestyle on this instrument, and then if you want, you can press this button to record what you're doing, and then you can place that CD onto the deck and cue it up so you can riser into it again later. And it's like, yeah, great. You could have done all that before we started messing around, because I'm in my flow right now, and then you're putting these giant prompts on screen that stop me from doing anything. Ugh, it's such a shame, because as I say, the tools are so good. Anyway, Fuser, I've got more important stuff to talk about.
And not much time to do it.
And not much time to do it. Yeah, I'm playing Control.
Ah, I thought that game has Rob written all over it. I thought.
That is correct. Quiet, Dan.
Oh, am I?
You're back now. You're back now. You're fine.
Oh, I didn't touch anything.
Yeah, it just went quiet for a moment. Yeah, you'd think. I think it's good. Like TLDR, it's good but flawed. It's not blowing me away, is what I would say, but I'm having a good time with it. Cool. So Control, yeah, it's the next third-person shooter from Remedy. You know, the original Max Payne guys and Alan Wake and slightly more problematically Quantum Break. Yeah, which was fine, but just not amazing. And Control is better than Quantum Break, but
that's what I was hoping.
But I wouldn't say it's like a million miles away from it in some respects. It's very familiar feeling in that respect.
It's definitely got similar concepts in it, hasn't it, than Quantum Break?
Yeah. I mean, the styling is cool. So you're inside, it all takes place inside the oldest house at the Federal Bureau of Control, which is this mysterious, hidden in plain sight building that no one seems to know exists, unless you're really in there. And then goes on about this bureau that what's the word they use? Paranatural, that investigates paranatural occurrences and attempts to science them. But so we're talking about classic cliches, basically, teleportation and telekinesis and the science of luck and how it can be things. And basically anything that's like a myth in the real world is kind of a real thing.
Yeah,
and it's that, and and it's how they manipulate it or try and keep it under wraps to stop people from freaking out, kind of thing. And this side of it, the storytelling and everything of that whole element is pretty great. Like the whole world building aspect to it is cool. It can perhaps get a little bit samey because you're in the building the whole time. Like it's not exactly going to be much for a variation.
Not a globe-trotting adventure. It's not Uncharted.
No, you're not going to have much in the way of biomes to deal with here. But it definitely sets itself up cool. Which then leads to the fact that you, as the newly appointed director, because you happen to pick up a fancy gun, gaining paranatural abilities, you become a para-utilitarian. And trying to somehow, everyone just goes, "Oh, you're the director, great, solve all our problems."
Great.
And then it's a third-person shooter, so it's just with some abilities.
An okay one, a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it plays fine. It can be surprisingly tough. So you don't have a great deal of health. So you can get into trouble very quickly, and the game doesn't have a particularly generous checkpoint system. Right. There are these places called control points dotted around, and every time you press X on one as you're wandering around, that becomes your restart point. So when you die, you'll go back to there, which can sometimes be problematic. You can sometimes be quite a ways away from a control point, and then we'll have to traverse through that bit again, sometimes doing fights along the way, which can get a bit tedious. I guess that's the Dark Souls-y thing.
Dark Souls, right, yeah.
But I do find it a little bit annoying sometimes when you're when the boss fight is some distance away from you.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn it, I've got to get there again. And getting there is not too much of a problem. It's not like an instant restart, but you still got to traverse your way up there. And sometimes you can just run past fights, which is fine. I think the fights have like this all comes back into the sort of look and feel of the game. It's like they do have a really unique look to things. Like, so the hiss, which are the main bad guys, they're always red, basically. And if you're in a hiss-controlled area or something bad's going down, basically all the lights in the area emit red light instead of regular light. So you always know when you're in a trouble spot because everything's red and black, basically. Right? Yeah. And it looks damn cool. When you shoot the hiss and they die, they give off this, like, weird, greasy mist that sort of just bursts out of them and then hangs in the air. So everything ends up getting kind of murky, like in the middle of a firefight. And it,
right. Because
because everyone's giving out this mist. But it's kind of cool because it's using a little bit of it's using a simplified like fluid dynamics model to sort of like hang around and float around, and other things can push it out of the way and things like that. So it looks really cool in action.
That's cool.
And it's got that sort of like oily quality, the way it changes the light in it as well. It's got like a sort of rainbowy look to it at times, and it's damn cool. But also gets in the way of the actual fight sometimes. So it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of the point. The grease in the air is supposed to block things, but when everything's like in the red light, it can sometimes be hard to see things that are threats.
Yeah.
And so there's been plenty of times where it's just like, oh, this fight's going really well. Oh, I'm dead. What the hell just happened? Because I had absolutely zero
that you could see.
Absolutely zero way of seeing what was going on. So that's a negative. I have the same problem with some of the enemy types as well, where there's one enemy in particular that I haven't fought all that much just yet, but it's invisible until it's not, and when it's not, it's trouble because it's like when it tends to go, it goes visible to attack. But its thing is it gets up right up in your grill, becomes visible, and then gives off a concussive blast. Except, which is fine when you're fighting them and there's not much else going on. But if you're fighting them and there's a lot going on,
right,
there's like a really good chance that there's a really good chance they're just going to materialize behind you and murder you,
explode. Yeah,
and there's not a great deal you can do about that. So that sucks. I'm not a big fan of them. But I haven't got a huge amount really to say about the rest of it. It's like it's cool. The abilities are fine. I mean, I like being able to telekinesis, but like anything really, you can pick up pretty much anything in the world and then lob it at stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
And the launch, they call it, and the launch is pretty powerful. So your sort of ability is on a shared energy pool. So you can't use it all the time, and your dash is on the same energy pool. Your evade,
right.
So like you're juggling what you want to do at any one time.
What about your flashlight? Lol.
not quite the same. But your ammo pool for your gun is shared as well, so you can't just switch to a different gun if you run out of ammo. You like if you're out, you're out. But ammo is recharging. So you're better off not basically emptying your clip because you can't shoot at all for a while if you empty your clip. Whereas if you leave just a little bit in the tank, it will recharge, but it's still usable.
Oh, okay.
It's I forget what it's more like, but if you empty it, basically you can't use it until it completely refills. So you're trying not.
Hard. Yeah.
There's a lot to juggle.
Interesting mechanic there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to juggle. You're quite weak, and you're only health regeneration. There's no health regeneration. In order to get your health back, you have to kill. So you have to kill the hiss, and then they drop little blue pellets on the floor near them. So not only do you have to kill, you have to get in their grill to regenerate. And it's a challenge. It really, there are certain sections where the difficulty suddenly goes, I'm kicking your ass right now. There's also this orb thing that heals everything nearby, so you've got to make sure to take that out, which in some of the more difficult incursions has been a real problem because I've been unable to get through the damn door to the room where this thing is because there's so many bad guys in the way, and I can't kill them because they're all healing. And it's like, okay, there are moments where the combat doesn't work because of that. There was nothing I could do there. It's like I wasn't in the room to kill the thing that's keeping everyone alive. Yeah. And I couldn't possibly get into that room to kill the thing. Yeah, so there are times where it doesn't work. So fortunately, a great deal of those times are optional. Like there's these things that happen in the bureau that are like oh, there's an event happening in this place, and as far as I can tell, you don't have to do them. They seem completely pointless. They're really hard, and they're completely pointless.
And they're not
so
necessary.
I'm kind of not doing them. They just like fill the screen every now and then with a little warning saying, "There's a thing going on. Do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "No." Why? Well, I don't need to. But yeah, it's cool. I don't know how far through it I am, but it's fascinating. It's cool. It's cool that it exists. I'm playing on PC, because I wanted the 60 frames per secondness of it. I wanted the frame rate more than anything else. And the version that's currently available on Game Pass on Xbox isn't the Ultimate Edition. So it's the last gen version, which I believe it has a 30 frames per second cap. So yeah, if you're going to play it on Game Pass, PC is probably the way to go. Although my PC is struggling a bit with it, honestly. It's I've not got it maxed all the way out, and I can't have RTX or any of that fanciness. But it is struggling with it. Now I've seen there's sort of reports on the details here, like on the implementation, that the DX12 version on PC can have micro stutter issues, and I think I'm getting those. Unfortunately, because it's the Games for Windows store, you can't get to the option to run the DX11 version, which would make these problems go away, apparently. But if you've got the Steam version of Control, you can do that. So, buyer beware. The Microsoft Store Game Pass version may have issues for you. But the Steam version is fine. There's a workaround, as long as you don't want that RTX. So Control. It's kind of cool. I love if there's one thing I want to point out, it's like it's a simple little thing, but I love when you walk into an area you've never been in before, and it wants to announce where you are, and it just fills the screen with massive text. Just goes, and it just like
you're the whole screen.
Yeah, you're in pneumatics, like or you're in the mail room. Just, and it's like I mean, that's really cool. Really dumb, but really cool. And the video sequence, yeah, and the like sciencey videos you find about the place of like the head of research like trying to vaguely explain what's happening. It's like those are so cool. Like because the oldest house has this thing where it's like it doesn't like new technology, so everything's done on like film and VHS and old school slide projectors. So these films you're discovering are like being shown on old school projectors and look really ropey and have been clearly edited together really ropily. And it's great.
That's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, the whole thing's got this like old school tech vibe going on, which is neat. Even though it's set in a world where like outside of the bureau everything's high tech.
Right. Oh, more so than today.
Well, like today, it's set today.
Normal, right?
But yeah, but inside the bureau everything's like Twin Peaks. So it's pretty cool. I wouldn't say I've got a huge draw from it, if you know what I mean. I'm not like itching to constantly play it, but I'm having a good time when I am. Until it kicks my ass. What else we got? The final thing, I
Nothing
suppose.
else, hopefully.
Well, let's very quickly touch on Dirt 5. It's all right.
Oh, really?
I mean,
It's all
about
right.
it's about to be.
It's okay. They're going for that Dirt 2 aesthetic, which I appreciate, but it's not as good as Dirt 2. It's a weird one. Like the handling is odd. The handling is not fun. So I'd say it's very basic feeling. Like it doesn't really feel like I'm having to wrestle the car into a rally-like scenario. It's super arcadey, but not like cool arcadey.
So now they've split it so far that we just want to play Dirt Rally, is it?
Yeah, kinda. It's not enough down that road. There's not enough. Also, it's super easy. Like I've maxed it out the difficulty level. I've put it on very hard campaign difficulty and turned the driving model up to as advanced as it will go. And I'm pretty much winning everything without too much hassle. There's a couple events that gave me a run for my money, but more because the struggle with those events is the handling model, because the handling model is intentionally bizarre on a couple of the events.
Right.
Like, like oval races, but on races that are in cars that are really odd and just want to drift the entire time. So the fight is against the car, which is cool. I actually enjoyed that quite a bit.
That's kind. Yeah. I mean, that kind of challenges is kind of the hallmark of something like Dirt, isn't it? Where it's got like weird aspects to it.
Yeah.
Like when it had the Battersea power station stuff.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think they've quite nailed the driving model. That doesn't seem right. The collision model is non-existent almost. Like just bump a car into everyone else. That's fine. I wonder if that's designed for online play or something like that. But just mush everyone. It's fine. There's no consequence. Yeah, and for a next gen game, it doesn't always feel that way. It's like the lighting model is 100% dynamic. So like this is the good thing. Like it can portray the world at any time of day you want, and when weather happens, like all the lighting changes to match it. So during races, it likes to do the trick that Onrush did, which is, hey, conditions are going to change during the race. Almost every race does it to some degree. You can even there's even a bit where you can put it in like a hyper accelerated mode if you want to, and go through an entire day in in a few laps, like a bit like Ridge Racer, I suppose, did back in the day.
Yeah,
and it's cool. Like the lighting model is cool. The problem with it is though, because everything is super dynamic, there are some levels where it tries to simulate cloud cover, and the whole thing just becomes like very flat looking. It's got the Halo Infinite problem. Right, like everything just looks a bit flat and a bit dull, and it's like, this is probably realistic, but it doesn't look good. Like, I don't know quite. It's weird. It also has no motion blur, which is bizarre as well. It's like, that's a weird choice. It's like every racing game has blur these days. It's like, why does this choose not to?
Got racing games called Blur. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, Dirt like aesthetic was never like super realistic, was it? It was more like cool looking, I thought. So that's a bit odd, isn't it? Dirt Rally would be a bit more like washed out and grey because it is in Wales.
Sure, yeah, especially Wales, yeah. But then there are moments where it looks fantastic. There are certain, it's. I think it's an understated thing, but there's a level where it's like a cloudy snow. It was like a cloudy snow event. So if you think about when things are snowy but still kind of misty and cloudy, lighting kind of is flat.
Oh yeah,
and is kind of like a bit dull, and the look of it here is absolutely spot on. It's like, and I don't know if I've seen an environment like that in a game before, where that sort of snowy, misty, flat feel felt real. Like it's. There are moments where this game has a phenomenal look to it, but there are times where it looks like garbage. Like it's a hugely mixed bag, and I think that describes the game as a whole. It's a bit of a mixed bag.
Okay. Well, that's Dirt 5.
But hey, it's on Game Pass right now, so
right. Nothing to stop you giving it a try.
Yeah, give it a go at least.
Yeah.
And it does. It still has the annoying presenter thing.
What?
It's still there.
No.
There's this super annoying American podcast presenter-y thing that they do every now and then that is it's just the worst.
Bloody
Conveniently, it tends to it's 100% skippable now, which is at least a blessing. But it's awful. It really is. I thought maybe they put it in the hands of a different studio that something different would come out. And yeah, this is different to the previous Dirt games, but some things remain the same and not for the better. So I think I can wrap that up.
That's Rob. And I think that'll be a podcast. We're slightly over our normal time.
Oh, there's no random rally generator either. Disappointment. They didn't carry that one from Dirt 4.
That didn't work out.
They could have tried it again. They need to try it again at some point. That's a podcast.
Yeah. What we got going on YouTube?
More Deus Ex, of course.
Yeah. It's mostly Deus Ex content at the moment. So there was more of that coming up. Oh, you can see our rambling through the mole tunnels.
Molly.
Molly. And yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Saladcast. Indeed we will. So until then, listeners, goodbye.